Hello, this is Dave, and he lives in the beautiful city of Florence in Italy. But we're not here to see him. We're here to see a medieval passageway 1 kilometre long, which is so hidden and so secret that they built it 3 stories up in the air and it's still visible today. This is the Vasari Corridor. Now, in case you're too young to remember the mid-1500s, here's a quick recap of what's going on. Florence is one of the most important and influential cities in Europe, and it's ruled by a duke, Cosimo de' Medici. The Medici family had risen to power a century earlier after making a fortune in banking. Cosimo becomes duke in 1537 and moves into the Palazzo della Signoria. But after a while, he decides that one Florentine palace isn't really enough for him, so in 1549 he buys another one, the Palazzo Pitti. It's at this point that the Palazzo della Signoria starts to be called the Palazzo Vecchio, the Old Palace. From the gardens of the new palace, you can see the Old Palace on the horizon, behind the tree on the right-hand side. And Cosimo looks at this and says, "You know what? Wouldn't it be great if there was some way of getting from here to there with no risks of getting wet or dirty or assassinated? How good would that be?" And so he sent for Giorgio Vasari, who you can see in this 16th century selfie. Vasari was already busy building the Uffizi, which was basically a huge admin building with some art in it, but has since become a huge art gallery with some admin in it. Since the Uffizi was next door to the Old Palace, he connected the two with a passageway on the top floor which we already saw. All that remained now was to extend it through the building, out the other end, and then all the way to the Palazzo Pitti. If you walk down to the archway at the end of the building and look up, that's the Vasari Corridor leaving the Uffizi. From here, it barges right through a couple of houses before crashing out the side of one of them and running along the river for a bit. And just when you think that this secret passageway couldn't get any less secret, it turns sharply left and crosses the river by clambering over the buildings on one of the most photographed bridges in Europe. This is, of course, the Ponte Vecchio, and Vasari simply built the corridor straight over the meat market that was here at the time, before telling the merchants that they'd have to clear out of their shops because the Duke didn't like the smell. You can imagine their faces when they saw the planning permission for that one. But eventually they left, and a whole load of jewellers moved in, and their shops are still here today. In the middle of the bridge, you'll find some windows that are significantly less medieval than the others. These were installed by Mussolini in 1939 before a visit by Hitler, so that Adolf could enjoy a panoramic view of the river. Hopefully you're able to enjoy this view without being driven to mass genocide. The Ponte Vecchio used to have 4 towers, 2 at each end. 3 of them have gone now, but the owners of this one stood up to the Duke and refused to knock it down, so the passageway had to go round it on stilts before crossing the street. Next up, the corridor flies across the Piazza Santa Felicità, completely obliterating the frontage of the Santa Felicità church. If you go inside the church, walk down the aisle a bit and turn around, you can see a balcony that is only accessible from the corridor. This enabled the Medici family to take part in services without having to mix with the congregation. From here, the corridor passes between some buildings and is hidden from public view for about 100 metres until it pops out again in the gardens of the Palazzo Pitti. This is where its journey ends, but while you're here it's worth checking out the grotto. It was built for the family 20 years later by Bernardo Buontalenti, and I can only assume that he was under the influence of a powerful amount of cheese. The Vasari Corridor is not currently open to the general public, although until a few years ago it was possible to arrange private tours for small groups at an extortionate price. It's currently under renovation to bring it up to modern safety standards, and in theory it should reopen sometime in the new year. But of course, you can always enjoy it from the outside for free. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do leave a comment, hit that like button or share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. And I will see you soon.